first thing Alpha Ronan Vale smelled inside the enemy king's dungeon was blood. The second was fear. The third scent stopped him so violently that the warrior behind him nearly crashed into his back. Ronan stood motionless in the narrow stone corridor while alarms thundered through the fortress above them. His warriors were fighting their way through the eastern courtyard. Flames had already climbed one of the watchtowers. Somewhere beyond the walls, hundreds of wolves from the Blackridge pack waited for their alpha to return, with the 6 warriors King Garrick had captured 3 weeks earlier. That was why Ronan had come. That was the only reason he was supposed to be here. But the scent, drifting from the last cell at the end of the corridor, changed everything. Soft, warm, wildflowers after rain, and beneath it, something so ancient and instinctive that Ronan's wolf slammed against his control. Mate. Ronan's breath caught. For 12 years, since the day he turned 18, he had wondered whether the moon goddess had given him a mate. He had searched every gathering, every alliance ceremony, every neighboring pack. Nothing. Eventually, he stopped hoping. Then, in the deepest dungeon of the enemy fortress, surrounded by blood and stone and the screams of battle, he found her. Ronan moved toward the final cell. His second-in-command, Dane, caught his arm. They had less than 5 minutes before the fortress guards sealed the lower levels. Ronan barely heard him. He reached the iron door and tore it open. Chains rattled in the darkness. A woman slowly lifted her head. She was sitting against the wall with shackles around both wrists. Her pale silver dress was torn and dirty. Dark auburn hair fell over her face. Bruises marked one side of her cheek. She looked exhausted, terrified. And when her green eyes met Ronan's, his wolf roared again. Mate. But Ronan knew that face. Everyone in the Northern Territories did. Princess Lyra Garrick, the only daughter of the man Ronan had come here to destroy. For one impossible second, Alpha and Princess simply stared at each other. Then Lyra whispered the words Ronan never expected to hear. "Please don't leave me here." 3 weeks earlier, King Garrick had broken the oldest law between the northern packs. During a peace gathering near the Ashen River, his soldiers ambushed a Blackridge patrol and dragged 6 of Ronan's warriors across the border. No declaration of war, no demand, no explanation. Only a message was delivered 2 days later. If Ronan wanted his men alive, he would surrender the Eastern Valley. The valley belonged to Blackridge. More importantly, it contained the only safe mountain passage used by families during winter. Giving it away would leave half Ronan's territory exposed. Ronan refused. Then Garrick sent him the blood-stained cloak of one captured warrior. That was when Ronan stopped negotiating. He gathered 40 of his strongest fighters and planned an attack on Garrick's fortress. They entered through an abandoned drainage tunnel shortly after midnight. Everything had gone according to plan. The outer guards were overwhelmed. The prison tower fell. 5 captured warriors were found alive. Then they discovered the 6th had been moved somewhere deeper inside the fortress. Ronan went after him personally. Instead, he found Lyra, the enemy king's daughter, his mate. Ronan stepped into the cell. Lyra shrank against the wall. It surprised him. Princess Lyra was famous across the northern kingdoms. People called her the Rose of Garrick Court. Stories described silk gowns, golden carriages, lavish feasts, and a princess protected by hundreds of soldiers. Nothing about the woman in front of him looked protected. Her wrists were raw beneath the shackles. There were old scratches on the stone beside her, and a small wooden bowl near the wall held nothing but water. Ronan crouched. Lyra watched every movement. He asked who had imprisoned her. Her answer came quietly. My father. For the first time that night, Ronan forgot the battle outside. King Garrick had imprisoned his own daughter. Lyra saw the disbelief in his face. She told him Garrick had locked her away 11 months earlier. Almost no one in the kingdom knew. Whenever visitors asked about her, the royal court claimed the princess was recovering from an illness at a distant estate. The truth was much darker. Lyra had discovered her father's plans to conquer the neighboring packs. Garrick intended to create a single northern kingdom under his rule. Any alpha who resisted would be killed. Their territories would be divided among commanders loyal to him. Lyra had confronted her father. She threatened to warn the other packs. That was the last night she slept in her own chamber. By sunrise, she was in chains. Ronan stared at her. There were many things he wanted to ask. But suddenly, footsteps thundered above them. Dane appeared at the doorway. They had less than 2 minutes. The 6th warrior had been found. Alive. They had everyone they came for. They needed to leave. Ronan looked at Lyra. Dane looked between them. Then he smelled it. His expression changed. There was no need to explain. Mate bonds could not be hidden from another wolf for long. Dane lowered his voice. She's Garrick's daughter. Ronan already knew. And Garrick had murdered 3 Blackridge families in border raids over the past year. His soldiers had burned farms. His commanders had tortured prisoners. Taking Lyra back to Blackridge could divide Ronan's entire pack. Leaving her here might kill her. Lyra seemed to understand his hesitation. Her face hardened. She pulled herself straighter despite the chains. If you cannot trust me, go. Ronan stared at her. She continued. But my father moves his army in 4 days. Blackridge is only the beginning. That changed everything. Ronan broke her chains. They escaped the fortress through the same underground tunnel, just as Garrick's soldiers sealed the lower gates. By sunrise, Ronan and his warriors had crossed the Ashen River. But Lyra was barely conscious. 11 months in captivity had weakened her badly. Ronan carried her through the final miles to Blackridge, and that was when his problems truly began. The moment the pack saw whose daughter their alpha carried in his arms, celebration turned into silence. Nobody cheered. Nobody welcomed her. Ronan's mother, Mara, stood outside the pack hall as he approached. She smelled the mate bond instantly. Her eyes filled with dread. Years earlier, Mara's younger brother had died fighting Garrick's soldiers. She had more reason than most to hate that family. Yet she said nothing. Ronan carried Lyra to the healer's quarters. For 3 days, Lyra barely left the bed. During that time, rumors spread. Some believed Garrick had deliberately planted his daughter inside the dungeon. Others believed Lyra had bewitched Ronan. A few demanded she be returned immediately. Ronan heard all of it. And though the mate bond pulled at him every time he stood near her, he refused to allow instinct to make his decisions. He wanted the truth. So when Lyra was strong enough, he brought her before the Blackridge Council. 6 elders sat around the long wooden table. Dane stood beside Ronan. Mara watched from the far end. Lyra entered wearing simple Blackridge clothing, borrowed from one of the healers. No crown, no jewels. No sign that she had once lived inside a palace. Ronan asked her to repeat everything she had told him. She did. Then she revealed something new. Garrick's planned invasion was bigger than Ronan had imagined. He had secretly gathered mercenaries from the southern coast. He had bribed 2 smaller alphas. And he was planning to attack Blackridge during the coming blood moon, when many packs would be gathered for the seasonal rites. If Blackridge fell first, the surrounding territories would lose their strongest defense. One elder asked how she knew this after spending 11 months underground. Lyra answered that before her imprisonment, she had copied parts of Garrick's military plans. She had hidden the documents somewhere her father would never think to search. Ronan leaned forward. Where? Lyra looked directly at him. In my mother's tomb. The room went silent. Queen Lyra Garrick had died when Lyra was 13. Everyone knew the story. A sudden winter fever, a private burial, a grieving king who refused to remarry. But Lyra told them another version. Her mother had not died from fever. She had been poisoned. Lyra believed Garrick ordered it after Queen Elowyn tried to stop his first attempt to invade neighboring Pack territory. Lyra had never been able to prove it. But before Garrick imprisoned her, she hid the copied invasion plans inside the stone chamber beneath her mother's tomb. If they could retrieve them, Ronan could expose Garrick's alliances and convince the remaining Alphas to unite against him. One elder laughed bitterly. To retrieve the papers, they would have to return to Garrick's territory, exactly where every soldier was now searching for Lyra. Ronan knew it was dangerous, but doing nothing was worse. 2 nights later, Ronan, Lyra, and Dane crossed the border disguised as traveling merchants. They reached the abandoned royal cemetery shortly before dawn. The place had been neglected for years. Moonlight covered the graves. Lyra led them through rows of old stone monuments until they reached a small mausoleum covered in ivy. Her mother's name was carved above the entrance. For the first time since Ronan met her, Lyra hesitated. He understood. She had not been allowed to visit her mother's grave since the burial. Ronan did not touch her. He simply waited. Eventually, Lyra entered. Behind the stone platform was a loose brick. She removed it. Inside was a leather packet. The documents were still there, but beneath them was something Lyra had never seen before. A sealed letter. It carried Queen Elowyn's crest. Lyra's hands trembled as she opened it. The letter had been written shortly before the Queen died, and what it revealed changed everything. Queen Elowyn had known Garrick would eventually imprison or kill Lyra if she opposed him. So she left proof of Garrick's earliest crimes. Names, payments, orders, locations, and one secret that explained why Garrick feared his daughter so deeply. Lyra was not simply his child. Through her mother's bloodline, Lyra had a legitimate claim to rule several northern territories that existed before Garrick seized power. If the old councils recognized her, Garrick's authority could collapse without a single battle. Suddenly, they heard movement outside. Dane drew his sword. Ronan smelled soldiers, dozens of them. They had been followed. The cemetery erupted into chaos. Garrick's men surrounded the mausoleum. Ronan shifted. His massive black wolf tore through the first line of soldiers. Dane fought beside him. Lyra tried to protect the documents. Then an arrow struck Dane's shoulder. Another soldier grabbed Lyra. Ronan heard her scream. Something inside him broke. He crossed the distance in seconds. The soldier barely had time to turn. Ronan slammed him into the ground. But more soldiers were coming. They could not win against an entire company. Lyra suddenly shouted for Ronan to follow her. Behind the mausoleum, hidden beneath dead vines, was a narrow tunnel once used by royal servants preparing burials. They escaped through it and reached the forest moments before Garrick's reinforcements arrived. But Dane was badly injured. They had to move slowly. By afternoon, Garrick's soldiers were closing in. Ronan made a decision. He would distract them, Lyra and Dane would return to Blackridge with the documents. Lyra refused. Ronan ordered her to go. She stared at him with fury. For the first time, the frightened woman from the prison disappeared completely. A princess stood in her place. She told him she had spent 11 months obeying orders because she had chains around her wrists. She would not spend the rest of her life obeying another man, simply because fate had called him her mate. Ronan froze. Lyra's words struck deeper than she intended. He realized something. Since rescuing her, he had thought constantly about protecting her, but he had never asked what she wanted. So he did. Lyra answered immediately. "Trust me." She knew the forest. She knew Garrick's patrol patterns, and she knew exactly where to lead the soldiers. Several miles east was an old iron mine. The tunnels beneath it had partially collapsed years earlier. Lyra led them there. Then she deliberately allowed Garrick's scouts to spot her. The soldiers followed. Ronan understood her plan almost immediately. They drew the enemy into the narrow mine passage. Once most of them were inside, Ronan shifted and brought down the weakened support beams. The tunnel collapsed behind them. No massacre. No unnecessary deaths. But the soldiers were trapped long enough for Ronan, Lyra, and Dane to escape. They returned to Blackridge the following morning, and this time, Lyra did not enter as a prisoner. She entered carrying the evidence that could save them all. Ronan summoned every neighboring alpha. Some refused to come. Others arrived expecting another territorial dispute. Then Lyra placed her father's documents on the council table. One by one, Garrick's secrets were exposed. Payments to mercenaries, plans to assassinate rival alphas, maps dividing conquered territory, even signed agreements from two leaders who had secretly promised Garrick their support. Those two men fled before sunset. The remaining alphas finally understood the threat. For the first time in generations, 7 northern packs agreed to fight under one alliance. But Garrick moved faster. Before dawn the next day, horns sounded from the eastern watchtower. His army had arrived. Hundreds of soldiers filled the valley. Garrick rode at the front. He demanded one thing: his daughter. If Blackridge returned Lyra, he claimed he would withdraw. Everyone knew he was lying, but fear spread through the pack. Some wondered whether sacrificing one woman could prevent war. Lyra heard the whispers. Before Ronan could stop her, she walked toward the outer gate. Ronan caught her arm. She told him this war had begun because she had challenged Garrick years earlier. She would not let innocent families die for her. Ronan shook his head. The war had not begun because of Lyra. It began because men like Garrick believed everyone around them existed to be controlled. Then Ronan did something that silenced the entire courtyard. He stepped away from Lyra. He told her that the mate bond gave him no ownership over her. If she wished to leave Blackridge, he would not stop her. If she wished to stay, he would fight beside her. The choice was hers. Lyra looked at the gates, then at the families gathering behind the warriors. Children, healers, elders. Garrick would eventually destroy whether she surrendered or not. She turned back toward Ronan. "I will stay." The battle began at sunrise. Garrick's army charged the eastern defenses. Blackridge wolves met them in the valley. Ronan fought at the front. The fighting lasted for hours. Then, just when Garrick's numbers seemed overwhelming, horns echoed from the northern ridge. The allied packs arrived. Garrick had believed fear would keep them divided. He had been wrong. His army began to collapse. Mercenaries fled. Commanders surrendered. And Garrick retreated toward the fortress. Ronan could have chased him. Lyra stopped him. She had a better idea. 3 days later, they entered Garrick's capital without an army. Lyra walked through the main gates carrying her mother's letter. Copies of Garrick's orders had already been distributed throughout the kingdom. Citizens knew the truth. Soldiers knew the truth. Even Garrick's own council knew the truth. When Lyra entered the throne room, her father was waiting. For 11 months, Garrick had believed chains had broken her. Instead, they had changed her. Lyra did not beg. She did not shout. She simply placed Queen Elowyn's letter before the council. Then she told them everything. Her imprisonment, her father's invasion plans, the poisoning of political rivals, his agreements with mercenaries. Garrick ordered his guards to arrest her. Nobody moved. He ordered them again. Still nothing. The captain of the royal guard removed his sword and placed it on the floor. Then he knelt. One by one, others followed. Garrick lost his kingdom not through battle, but because the people he ruled finally stopped obeying him. He was removed from the throne and imprisoned beneath the same fortress where he had kept his daughter. Lyra was offered the crown. She refused it at first. She did not want to become another ruler whose authority came from fear. But the council reminded her that walking away would leave a dangerous vacuum. So Lyra accepted under one condition. The Northern Kingdom would no longer be ruled by one unchecked monarch. A council of pack leaders, citizens, and regional representatives would share power. For the first time, Garrick's territory began changing. Weeks passed. Then months. Ronan returned to Blackridge. He never asked Lyra to follow. The bond remained between them. Strong, constant, sometimes painful. But Ronan meant what he had told her. A mate was not property. If Lyra chose another life, he would accept it. Then one autumn evening, while Ronan stood overlooking the Blackridge training field, a familiar scent reached him. Wildflowers after rain. He turned. Lyra stood behind him. No royal guards, no crown, only a traveling cloak and the smile he had seen far too rarely. Ronan asked why she had come. Lyra told him the new council was stable. Her kingdom no longer needed her every hour of every day. Then she reminded him of something. The first time they met, she had asked him not to leave her inside a prison. This time, she was not asking to be rescued. She had already rescued herself. She had come because she wanted him. Ronan stepped closer. Still, he did not touch her. Not until Lyra closed the distance herself. And when she finally placed her hand in his, the bond between them settled into something different. Not possession. Not destiny forced upon two strangers. Choice. Later, people would tell stories about Alpha Ronan Vale and Queen Lyra. They would say he conquered a fortress and found his mate buried in its darkest dungeon. They would say fate brought them together. But those who knew the truth understood that fate had only opened the door. Ronan and Lyra were the ones who chose to walk through it. Because sometimes the person you are destined to find does not arrive dressed in silk beneath a full moon. Sometimes you find her in the last place you would ever search, behind enemy walls, wearing chains, and carrying the secret that can bring an entire kingdom to its knees.